Warning: this podcast may contain strong language, sensitive topics, and plenty of laugh out loud moments. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Thrivin With DVIBZ. Today's episode is all about emotional health and well-being. I'm your co-host, Nick. I've been a consumer for 30-something years.
And I'm Dee, and I've been having a love affair with Mary Jane since 1977.
Nice.
Emotional wellness. This is such a great topic. And Nick, you're the one who chose this topic. We like to take turns. And so why don't you tell us what was going down in your mind when you were thinking about this?
Okay, so there's a couple of reasons why I think this is a very timely and important topic for us to get into when it comes to overall wellness and how cannabis and other plants medicine or earth medicines can help in that process. And I like this one because I think it's something that most people struggle with, even if they've been on this journey of wellness or self-healing or whatever you want to call it. This one is still sticky for most of us. And for me, it relates to our relationships because our emotions are really tied to the people around us, right? We walk into a room and the vibe is one way. We'll generally feel into that. It'll start to either impact us or we'll have to impact the vibe and change it, right? Humans, we tend to balance out the energies. And so much of emotional health for me is health in relationships, setting clear boundaries, having a strong relationship with self. We've talked about that in previous episodes, the relationship of the self and the relationship to self. So for me, it's all about how we interact inside of the world from day to day in all these different relationships, knowing that our emotions are not always in our control, knowing that sometimes other people can do or say things or events can happen that trigger our emotions. So that's why I wanted to get into it today, because I feel like it's something that even the advanced listeners out there can get something from.
Yeah, well, emotional health affects all of us, and we all deal with it in different ways. Sometimes by trying not to deal with it at all, right? So I was thinking about this too, and it's one of those things that means something very personal to each, individual. And so I decided to ask AI to give me a brief definition of emotional health. Would you like to know what it says?
Yeah, I'm fascinated.
Okay. It said, emotional wellness is the ability to recognize, understand, and manage our emotions in healthy ways. It's about how we handle stress, relate to others, and make choices that align with our well-being. So self-care, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, that works for me. That sounds like a good definition. And emotional health for me is something that I don't think too much about until it's unbalanced, until it's emotional unwellness.
Yes.
So I'm going to call that emotional illness. Okay, because to me that's what it feels like. Mm-hmm. And what I'm talking mostly about is things like temper tantrums, meltdowns, right? Emotional meltdowns, and those dark nights or days of the soul. Mm-hmm. So these are things that most of us experience, I would say. I might even go out on a limb and say everybody experiences this at some point or other, at least one of these. And so I wanted to kind of dig deeper into our own experience and ask you, what when you think of emotional wellness for yourself, like you already spoke about feeling, balanced or unbalanced, next, right? I'm sorry, I forgot the phrase that you used for that.
No, that's pretty much what I was saying.
What do you think contributes to that in you? What does that feel like? Like when we're talking about things like meltdowns and temper, like, do you have these things, dark nights of the soul?
Yeah, totally. I mean, for me, like, I think it's worth like clarifying what we mean by those three types of emotional. I guess they're like, you can call them emotional symptoms, or if you want to get even more precise, it's really an emotional message from our nervous system, right? That something is not right, something's off, right? And I think it's that feeling of like something feels off here. And I feel like there's different layers to, like, let's start with like just like something simple, like what you call like a temper tantrum, right? Or a hissy fit, or like where let's, you're in line for something and it's taking you a long time and the person in front of you is slow, and it's like a senior citizen who's counting out the change, and like, and like the person makes a mistake and you're just like, God damn it, can you just hurry the F up, right? Like those kind of outbursts, like we all have them, I feel like. I don't know, even like ascended, like yogi master whatevers, they still freak out, right? You lost my luggage? What? Like, we are human, so we have those moments. And I think that when we're talking about emotional health, it's like, how do we process those moments, right? Like, we feel it coming up, I feel it in my body. Like there's like this heat that can come up in those moments. Like it's like like something's taken over me, right? There's like a feeling that's rising inside of me. And then it's like, how do I choose to respond? Do I let it flow through me and acknowledge it and be real with it? Do I try and suppress it and stifle it? Or do I try and project it somewhere else? And I think those are some of the key choices, whether it's like something very basic, like a little thing, or whether it's something that's life triggering, like a real meltdown based on, valid, quote unquote, things that would put a lot of people under a stressful moment. So I'll pause there, because I think dark nights of the soul are a little bit different, but I want to get your feedback on what I just said about the emotions in that way.
Yeah, and I see it as kind of like a red tide. That's what like it feels like to me, right? And that's mostly because I think for myself, I associate like what does my emotional wellness, what has affected it in my life, right? In earlier episodes, I've talked about like where I come from, but in the terms of like, let's just say, like I had a lot of anger issues, right? And I had very low self-esteem and little self-worth. And so my emotional wellness state is really tied to those things, because those are core issues that affect my emotional well-being. And so when I'm talking about meltdowns and temper tantrums, of course, that is like at this extreme end of the scale, like a range, right? But I wanted to kind of talk about that, because that is where we can often do the most damage to ourselves and others and our relationships. So this, to me, was super important to kind of start there. And actually, the tools, as we get into this and we talk about the tools that we personally use to help us navigate that, then we just be able to use any of those tools for like even a mild onset of emotional illness. Let's call it that.
I think it's so important to like that we have an ability to see that all of these feelings are valid. And so I wanted to just briefly touch on the fact that for me, emotional health and wellness is the ability to express the whole range of human emotions relevant or in context of the experience we're having, right? Sometimes it's very appropriate to show extreme anger and rage in a situation that involves protection of a young one or something like that, right? Like those kind of things. Those are moments where, it's very valid. Or even negative feelings of shame or embarrassment right? These are very healthy responses to various situations. And as long as we're able to feel all of them, depending on what the situation calls for, to me, that's what emotional health looks like. And I think sometimes maybe people think, well, it means I never get out of line. I never say the wrong thing. I never hurt someone's feelings. It's like, no, dog, you're going to hurt people's feelings. That's a reality. We're going to, we are, right? So we have to figure out how the biggest part of emotional maturity then is like, how do you clean up your mess when you make one with those people in your life, right? In those relationships, when you cross the line, how do you establish that, okay, hey, that's my bad. I did that. I'm sorry. I won't do that again. And just get that accountability going.
Yeah, it's a lot of people will try to, deny it or ignore it or, make it like it's something to flex, make it like a flex, but it's not the flex you think it is, right? To be honest, even though these are very human, natural things that are part of our psyche, we're complicated. And so, depending on where we're at, the circumstance, what's going on around us, that has a huge impact on all our health for, mind, body, heart, and soul, right? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I think the dark nights of the soul, I think they can feel like these other things, but really they are a little bit different. And I think, I'm not sure, but we'll talk about that and see if I still keep that opinion. But really what I kind of was thinking about, like you said, is that I wanted to start off saying that, you know what, we are only human. We're human. And so we're not perfect. And so I kind of wrote down like 5 things that I thought were good about having these extreme, overwhelming, reasons to our behavior, right? And the first thing I thought of was that, it really humbles us. It really is humbling. And honestly, I think humility is something really good. It doesn't always come in a nice package, how we recognize that, but I think it's really good for us to take that humility, and with that humility comes compassion, and compassion for ourselves and for others. And that's a very great reframing for those things like you're talking about, when you're on the road and some asshole cuts you off, or like you're doing something, you're in a hurry and somebody's taking their sweet, time, right? Those little things, let alone the big things. Okay. So I'm trying to find where I wrote this down. Let's see. The things that's good about having these issues, or about recognizing that we have these issues, is that it brings truth. It brings honesty to ourselves and to others. So it can also open the door to communication, to authentic communication, right? Because this is real. And no matter what your reasoning is, and we always got lots of reasons for our bad behavior, whatever our reasons are, the truth is the truth. And the truth is that, for some period of time, or for some moment, or for some reason, we are just like raw emotion. And we don't have any filter on that often, and we don't have any way to control it once it gets out there. A lot of times, that's how it feels. It's not necessarily true, but feelings aren't facts, but they're very good indicators, right? So it's a good indication. So and mostly I feel like these things that we deal with in our emotional health, they give us this amazing opportunity to grow. because that honesty, and particularly that self-honesty that occurs when that happens, because you're right, you said it already, we feel the shame, we feel the embarrassment, we often feel with regret about our behavior during that moment, and regret that we were not unable to stop, right? So being out of control, that's really scary, and it feels really vulnerable. Mm-hmm. So anyhow, the thing about it is, if you are one of those people that feels like often and doesn't really want to deal with stuff like that, just by like having a total meltdown or a hissy fit, there's only really, in my mind, 3 things that we have to do. One is we have to be willing, first and foremost. We have to be willing to find a different way. So we have to be, the other thing is willing to learn. We have to be willing to learn those other ways, because often we react in those ways because we don't know a different way to react. Right? If we knew, maybe we would have made a different choice or had different tools available to us. So, and the third thing is that we have to be willing to practice, right? We have to be willing to try different ways. So putting what we learn into, practice. I don't know. What do you think?
No, I feel like there's a couple of things that I wanted to pick up on what you said there. And one of them is like, this is why, if you've ever met like a fake guru, like a spiritual teacher who doesn't really have that authentic light in them, but they're presenting as if they do, this is where you'll see that breakdown happen. It's how they treat people and how they interact with the world when the world doesn't go their way, right? If you ever meet someone, and this is why I never claim any sense of like any of that stuff, like, enlightenment, no way. I don't want to play with that kind of dynamite, right? Like, no, I'm a human. Like you said, I'm human. I'm a person. I'm just dealing with life one day at a time, like everyone else. And I don't have anything special that anyone else doesn't have, right? My specialness is special to me, but it's no more special than your specialness, right? We're equally special together in that sense. So I think when you see people who are acting out of line, this is why, because this is the emotional part of it. It's so vulnerable, like you said. It's so like raw that a lot of people skip over it, and a lot of people spend a lot of their focus on the mind and the mental transformative power, of like personal growth and things, and they will avoid this matters of what I would call matters of the heart, right? Which are it isn't about what you're doing in the world. It isn't about what your meditative practice is. It's about how are you treating people? How do you treat small animals? How do you treat old people? How do you treat little children? Like, these are this is the touchstone of the growth in this area. And it's very easy and very uncomfortable. It's very easy to miss, to skip it over because of how uncomfortable the work is.
Definitely. And if that worked, that would be awesome. It would be so awesome if you didn't have to do anything. But the truth is that if these emotional illness, as I call it, so emotional unwellness, it can rob us of the joy of living. And so it's one of those things that really, I feel, if we want to be joyful in our lives, that, we need to look at. And, we all have emotional health. So really the question is, how's yours, right? It's like, how's your emotional health? And so I guess the other thing I wanted to kind of sort of think about was like, okay, so we understand that for us as individuals, it's important to us So what role does cannabis play? You know, what role does it play in helping us recognize and process and utilize what we're learning from, you know, these moments of personal awareness? Let's call it. Yeah, I don't know. Like,
I think it's a great question because for me, and I'll tell you a little bit of a backstory about how I've come to some of these insights. Okay, so I was starting to notice about maybe like 10 or 15 years ago, symptoms that would be associated with anxiety, you know, increased heart rate, you know, racing thoughts, ruminating on different, you know, catastrophizing certain outcomes, you know, not to the point of debilitation, but to the point of discomfort, right? And you know, a little bit of pain, a little bit of mental anguish, right? Well, not fun. And so I started to treat the symptoms of that. And as what I found was that cannabis was so helpful in treating those symptoms. It was like everything just calmed down, everything got quiet in my mind, and I was able to then process things one thought at a time. So it just helped me really slow everything down. When I got to that certain level of comfort there, I realized that the discomfort then was starting to come from my body and not from my mind. So like my mind is quiet, but then I had all this stuff in my body, emotions that were stuck, thoughts or feelings that I'd repressed, that I had not been able to see, parts of myself that I didn't want to look at, that I wanted to keep away as far as I could. And so as I started to go down in like the direction of down from like my brain to my heart and my body and start to look at these feelings, I realized that they were tied to my nervous system. And that what was at the heart of what I really wanted was a calm and steady nervous system. And so then that was the work that I did, a lot of inner child work, a lot of emotional healing work. Parts therapy is one thing that people talk about, where you really see like the parts of your emotional personalities, like as if you have like hundreds of different emotional personalities, and you look to find ways to bring those personalities, those identities together. So that's a big part of that work that I did. And as I started to do that, I noticed that everything was starting to get much calmer, and I had more patience for myself, more compassion for myself when I did get out of my emotions were getting a little out of whack, and I get more patience being with other people who were also dysregulated, and learning how to regulate myself even when others were dysregulated.
yeah, that's really important, you know. So many, and it's funny because it's kind of like a vicious circle, right? How we feel our emotional health affects us in all parts of us, because you know our health is holistic, right? Our wellness is holistic. It's not one thing. It's, you know, everything is integrated. Everything affects everything. And so so what you're saying is very true. And what is also true is that external things definitely have an effect on your emotional wellness as well. So, you know, I'm thinking about like people that deal with chronic pain, you know, trauma, a loss, you know, grief. These things have, of course, a bearing on our emotional health.
Yeah.
And so, again, like you said earlier, it's not about, you know, denying that or making it go away or ignoring it, because it's a very normal part of our, you know, humanity, right? Or our being. So, you know, I guess the best example, and as bad as it can get, right, in how we feel, as negative as it can feel, it can also feel like amazing on the other side, right? The other extreme. So, you know, think about like those people that fall in love, you know. Well, I shouldn't say those people. I mean, people, me too. You too. So when we fall in love, right, if we're lucky enough to feel that, and it doesn't need to be with another person, right? It could be with a pet or something, you know, a child, whatever. But that feeling of love, that fullness that fills our heart, like think about how powerful that is. So, or when we feel the extreme of pride, right? Pride, like we're so proud of something, either something we've done or somebody that we care about has done or whatever. Those feelings, they just fill us, right? And that's why like every love song ever written is written by someone who's experienced that, right? And that's why we feel like when we hear, we're like, oh yeah, this deacon for me. so when you think about the power of that, then when you acknowledge that at the other end of the scale or the spectrum, it can feel as powerful negatively as well.
Yeah.
So man, that's powerful. So, it's inevitable as human beings and all our frailty. It's inevitable that sometimes we reach that point of no return where we just go, we just let it happen. Yeah. And, yes, it can feel really uncomfortable and it can be, really contribute to other things in our life. It doesn't help us, is what I'm saying, okay? But it can help us if we choose for it to help. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of what I was hoping we could sort of, explore tonight, was that about how that can help us. Because if it's going to happen anyways,
Yeah, and I think that's like kind of bringing it back to cannabis is it helps me and helps other people that I know ride through these waves. And if there's these emotional swings that we can go throughout the day where we can get lost in a cul-de-sac of a negative feeling and get really, and I know what it's like to go around and around and around, and your brain's not helping you because you don't feel good, and then your brain's kind of starting to take a shit on you and tell you like what you're not doing right, and you're like, I'm trying to focus on this, and it's like, well, you shouldn't have done that yesterday. Like, how come you didn't sleep well enough? Like, you didn't drink enough water either. What do you think's the problem? So that kind of like internal dialogue can be really, really destructive and really distracting that occurs. And so cannabis can, again, like it can create a little bit of a buffer. And we've talked about that in other episodes as well, like how it can just be a little bit of a buffer for some of these sharp edges and allow us to feel the feelings without suppressing them and without totally giving into them, just letting ourselves go and with emotions or feelings that, if we're not careful, could lead to harmed relationships or harmed physically or whatever, right? Depending on where we're thinking.
Yeah, because when we're in that state, when we're in that red zone, we're very vulnerable. Right. So because we're at our wits' end, we're not being, cognizant of what's going on. So yeah, and like I was thinking about anger. Okay, I just want to touch on that a little bit because I think to some degree many people might have issues with anger. There's a lot to be angry about in the world. So I'm not really talking about like the person in line in front of you that's taking their sweet time. That's to me an aggravation, okay, an annoyance, let's say. Okay, unless of course I'm late for something or whatever, but then it's my own, I probably shouldn't have stopped then anyways.
Your brain's going, you should have left 5 minutes early.
Yeah, I'm talking about like that kind of anger that even if it's not anything to do with what creates that anger, that things trigger. People, places, things, they all trigger that anger inside. And often that anger, at least for me, is really a mask. It's like a Halloween mask for pain. So actually more than a mask, it's more like the physical manifestation of my pain. And when I kind of discovered that for myself, and it wasn't just about discovery, it was about admission. It was about, I had to like really see it and accept it and own it. Yes, this is how I feel. Right, wrong, whatever, you know. And so I realized that I would use anger to deflect from my pain, from admitting it to either another person or even to myself. And it created this very tightness. And you know, you feel it in your chest because this is where your heart chakra is, right? Your heart center, your emotional center. So often that can feel like tight in your chest. And yeah, it really left me feeling like those emotions could feel so overwhelming where they just like completely block anything else from coming in except for anything that would roll around along with them. You know? So I guess an example would be like, okay, so, you know, I might want to like be so pissed off about something or somebody that I'm just going to like lose my shit. Right? I mean, we all see it differently for ourselves, but I think we all can relate to those terms and what feeling or what we're talking about that we're feeling when we say that, whatever that is for you. Right?
I love this topic a lot because I think it's helpful to go into a deep dive of one of these emotions so that we can really, I think, show people what we mean by the holistic approach to emotions. So what I wanted to ask you about that is like, okay, so first let's start at the beginning about like what anger really is. What in your sense, like what do you mean when you say anger, and where do you think that anger lives, whether it's healthy or not? Just where does it come from?
Well, I often, to be honest, associate my anger with frustration. And I do have to say that the things that make me angry today are very different from the things that made me angry, you know, 30 years ago or even 10 years ago, right? And so for me, I'm really glad to say that because not that I'm glad that I still get angry, but that it does show me, it is a milestone to show me my own personal growth, you know, because it's a lifelong endeavor, and I'm glad to know I'm still, you know, slowly moving forward. I'm not reverting so much, right, to how I was that made me so desperate to change, to seek change. And, you know, change, I guess it is the right word. I hesitate to use it sometimes because in many ways, I feel like it's not necessarily that we need to change. I think of it more in terms of we need to find better ways because these are natural things that we do, and we need to find better ways.
Yeah, what I wanted to add to that is this idea that, like you said it earlier, that everything has a reason and a positive reframing, right? That we're talking about here, and I think anger is no different. For me, it's like anger is like it's letting someone know that they've just stepped on your foot and it hurts, right? It's being able to say, "Hey, you stepped on my damn foot," right? Like, watch where you're going. Where if as children, if we had parents who didn't really allow us to express anger, or if we were subjected to things which children or anybody shouldn't be subjective, and we're left with an excess of anger, it can be very difficult to know what to do with all those feelings. And if you don't have if you don't look at your whole emotional bandwidth and see a possibility for expression, then it can tend to leak out in anger or rage or depression or other areas where where it can be a little bit more destructive. So I think like anger is one of those things where if we can use it like to fuel us, like a fire within, but it can be more of a candle than a raging inferno, right? If we can transmute our energy and keep it to if we can manage it and keep it at a healthy level, then it can fuel us, right? It can fuel us if when we are encountering injustice in the world, it can fuel us to take action, to stand up for others, to even put ourselves at risk because it's the emotion is there and it allows us to do that. So those are just some of my thoughts about it, about anger in particular.
Well, I think you really said it. Like you said, like if we can take that anger, and I hear what you're saying. Anger is an amazing motivator. Anger can motivate you to do all kinds of things. The only problem with it is in my mind is that it takes its toll. That it takes it robs us a bit of the joy of living. And so, but you had the answer in my mind, and that is transmuting that anger into passion. To me, there's a very big difference between anger and passion, and I feel them both very strongly, as you well know. The transmutation of that, the reframing of that, is just a reframing in how I'm perceiving that. And so it's not to say I don't have it and it's not useful. It just, I want it to help me the best it can. And so I don't want it to take anything away. So that's why I sort of try to reframe it into passion as versus anger. I don't know. What do you think? Like, is that, just.
I think there's definitely times where I want to drill into this concept of reframing and transmuting, because we've definitely spoken about that in a recent episode as well, this idea of reframing. And I think we can take it to a little bit of a deeper level here. So when we're talking about transmuting, or at least how I understand it, just my own personal understanding of this, is where we can take almost any circumstance that happens to us in our lives, and over time, with patience and gentle care, we can shift how we understand or experience that event or feeling, even if it's initially a very negative one. Right? We can see that over time, if something bad happens to us over time, it can be something that we learn from, and we realize, oh, even though it was bad, it led me to where I am today or whatever. So for me, the idea of transmuting is if I'm feeling like I literally store my anger in my, I'm not literally doing this, but energetically, right? I visualize my anger living in my solar plexus. And when something that pisses me off happens and I'm able to process it, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to keep some of this charge because that really did piss me off when that person did whatever. I'm not going to respond to it because it doesn't need the response to it, but I'm going to keep this energy. And when I feel, and this is where I use my anger energy, if you will, when I feel a little bit tired at work or being with my family, doing family responsibilities, I tap into that place, into that solar plexus area. And it's almost like that energy is waiting for me to be used. Right? It's like,
well, your solar plexus is your other chakra, your heart chakra.
Yeah, no, it is one of the energy centers.
It's the center of your power, right?
Right. So that's where I visualize it living, and then when I need it, it's there. Right? When I need it to push through a deadline, or I'm working hard, or I'm feeling tired and I need to kind of get it, or whatever, it's there. So I feel like that's how I view that process of transmutation in my own life.
It makes sense. And I think what I would say to that is I would say, of course, that's our power center. right? That's where our passion lives, our power. But the thing is, okay, think about anger and how powerful it is, right? It powers a lot of stuff. What else is as powerful as anger?
Well, I guess it's like, is it initiator of action?
Well, here's a simple answer. Love is as powerful as anger. It's as powerful as hate. And so what I'm suggesting is that we need our power. But where does our power come from? Do we need anger to fuel our power? Sometimes, maybe, I guess. Do we utilize love to fuel? And the thing is like, okay, it's kind of like artists, right? Some of the greatest works of art have been done at a time when the artist is experiencing the most extreme pain, right? So that's fueling their passion, and it's coming out as something beautiful. You rarely hear of an artist creating from a place of joy, but it happens, right? And because that can fuel you as well. But it then becomes a choice to us about how we want to fuel ourselves. And it's true, like anger is just so easy, man. It's like a motivator drug. It's like you just take a little bit and off you go. So it's easy, and it's the most common one that we often feel, especially if we've gone through trauma in our childhood or things like that, or gone through really hard experiences. That is the most familiar one to us, is anger, because we're angry and frustrated about what is happening to us. And sometimes we're angry and frustrated about what we're doing to ourselves, right? And often, that comes through, especially particularly when, you're being around, you're around someone who is emotionally abusive, or any kind of abuse, really. Right? Because then, for whatever our reasons, we blame ourselves. And I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about that, because along with anger issues, which were really based in fear, right? I felt like I didn't have control over my, life, and that people could just hurt me at their whim, in whatever way, right? So, and the results of that, it also left me with struggling with my own, self-esteem and self-worth, like I mentioned earlier. And so then it becomes a vicious cycle, because then you allow things to happen to yourself, and then you hate yourself too. Right? So this kind of environment is not a super fertile environment for wellness, and I hope that when we move forward, we're going to talk about different kinds of wellness, like mental wellness, physical wellness, spiritual wellness. But here, when we're talking about emotional wellness, this is often one of the most powerful ones that we often try to ignore, or to deny ourselves the ability to really face the truth, our own truth of ourselves, and realize that, forgive ourselves, realize that we are only human. And, if we choose to, we can learn how to find different ways of dealing with stuff. And that is part of the healing work. And so that's the work, right? So, yeah, I just think it's amazing how underrated and how unexplored I feel like emotional wellness is, particularly in our cannabis community, because cannabis is one of the most amazing things to help us with. So Nick, that's going to lead me into my question for you now. How does cannabis, you start to speak about that buffer, but let's go down that little rabbit hole and see about, for us, how does cannabis help us?
Well, I guess for me, this whole topic is about the creating a place of safety so that we can feel what we need to feel. And I often, the relationship I have with cannabis is one of fortification. And on days where I'm feeling a bit shaky, it actually makes me feel fortified. The cannabis actually makes me feel a little bit stronger, a little bit more grounded, a little bit more something. It's hard to explain, but it's like it allows me to feel that sense of regulation and safety in order to do what I need to do. And of course, there are times where I need to face that without cannabis, and I know that I can face difficult moments without it. I also just know that there's a level of pain and discomfort which isn't always educational, and I don't always need to experience that discomfort in order to get the lesson behind what it is that I'm going through.
When you were saying, instantly what came to my mind was that song by Gregory Isaacs. Is it Night Nurse?
Oh, I don't know that one.
Cannabis is your night nurse. This is a reggae song.
Okay. Well, it's because I think I wanted to bring it back a little bit to this idea of the dark night of the soul, because it's connected. Because there's like you said, right? There's like those little moments that can be like temper and are just like we need to regulate and manage, and then there are deeper ones that are like that come from life and its experiences. But then there is like the spiritual growth part of it. And that's what I think when I say a dark night of the soul, I mean an intense period of one night to many nights to sometimes people have like a year of a dark night of the soul. Like, I don't know how long it needs to be, but generally what's occurring is usually a period of deep rest and reflection, to the point where we may not be able to get up physically, or we just feel so overwhelmed with life that we just need to kind of be still for a while. And it can feel very challenging. And it's in those moments where I feel most dysregulated, where I feel most out of control, that I know if I just sit with it, and if I have a little bit of weed, or I have a little bit of, like something that helps me get through that moment, then I know I can get to the next one, and the one after that, and the one after that. But I also know that those moments, those dark nights of the soul, are where so much of the growth happens, where I'm able to see like how I've been in relationships. Maybe I've been a real bastard in some way to somebody or to a number of people that I wasn't quite willing to acknowledge or look at. And then these dark nights occur where I am given the gift of being able to see it. Like, like Scrooge getting visited by three ghosts. Like, I'm able to see, the ghost of asshole past, present, and future. And if I choose to, right, where the growth comes is, okay, now that I've seen these lessons, do I really make the changes in action that will allow me to move through this? Or do I just kind of experience it and then go back to the way I was doing it? So that's kind of the difference, is the choice of how do I apply this lesson, or do I just ignore it and kind of hope it goes away? Which, spoiler alert, it never goes away. It usually comes back like 10 times harder, and it becomes even more difficult the next time. So I'm hopefully I'm learning my lessons as I get older to try my best to deal with stuff head on, because putting it into the future pile really only makes it more challenging for the most part.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't know, man, like when I have those dark nights of the soul, and I have to admit, like I actually almost welcome them, because even though they're like super uncomfortable, I know I'm going to be fine. Okay, maybe I don't like what I'm seeing or understanding, or, the insights I'm getting. But the thing is, it's like a vegetable that you don't really like. At least you know it's good for you.
Yeah.
And they always start with something that sounds a little internally like this. Oh yeah, see? Like, what do you think you're doing? Who do you think you are? Oh, yeah. You're probably just gonna like change your mind tomorrow. Or, like whatever, right? Depending on what starts it, what triggers it.
Yeah.
And then it's like, my other internal voice is like, oh, here we go. Where's my weed? Okay, fine. Obviously, like something I need to learn a lesson right now. And actually, I feel like along with plant wisdom, that's like the universal wisdom. I feel like it's like, or dare I say, higher self wisdom.
Yeah.
Okay. So then it's like, okay, I know I'm in for however long it's going to last, because it's not something I'm going to cut short. Okay. It's not something like you got 10 minutes, go.
Right.
So I got to get comfortable. I'm going to settle in. I'm probably going to make a cup of tea or whatever. And I will literally just assume a position of submission, almost, of openness.
Yeah.
And I do envision my heart center opening, because it's, nobody likes to hear or learn things about yourself you don't like, right? Especially when you work hard to be your best self, right? And so I kind of feel like I have to like prepare myself to just open myself to whatever wisdom is going to come through. And it really helps me to know from my own personal experience that every time that happens, I feel like I level up.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like growing pains. That's how I see it in my head. It's kind of like growing pains, and it's all right. And I am the type of person that will like have little ritual nights, right? Like I'll have, full moon ritual, just myself usually. And so what I see, I've reframed it to tell myself that this is the universe's choice of ritual. This is my higher self's choice of ritual. So even though I wasn't sent an invite, didn't know about it beforehand, I'm expected to show up. And so I do. And try to be willing. Because like I'm always saying, willingness is really the key. It's one of the keys. It's like, it's all you really need to do is stay willing. Even if it's just a little tiny bit.
Yeah. And it can be the hardest part of the journey, is to just open your hand, or assuming a submissive or a welcoming position physically. Usually it's like it's funny how our bodies are always connected to things like opening, you can imagine something, holding on tight to something, and versus opening your hand and embracing it. The other one is, putting our foot down, right? So we have these very physical ways to describe how these emotions happen. And I remember I went to this mushroom, and it was mushroom and LSD, mushroom Lucy ceremony. And it was combining both of these two wonderful tools and medicines together. And what had happened was, there was a course of the evening, there was a shamanic leader, and there was a number of people in the group, and we'd all had our little breakthroughs, usually by like a one-on-one with the leader, or with a conversation with our our fellow journeyers. And it was all kind of in a very synchronistic way. Everyone was getting what they came for, right? We don't always know what we're going to go for in these ceremonies or whatever, but often we can feel like we got what we came for. And so everybody was waiting for this one woman to have her breakthrough, what she was here for. And it was so crazy, because earlier in the night, I had been like kind of feeling this intuition to give this woman this little angel figurine, and the voice just said, "Go give it to her." So I did, and I'd forgotten all about it. I'd forgotten that I'd given it to her, and so this is like now hours later. Everyone's had their little breakthrough and cry and whatever, and this woman, we're just kind of patiently all like waiting for her to, and for her it was about letting go. And it was about letting go of something in her past that she didn't want to let go of. And it was physically manifesting in her hand, which was closed in a fist. And eventually the leader was like talking to her and working with her and talking with her. And eventually he said, "What would happen if you just opened your hand?" And so very slowly, she just opens her hand. And what's inside her hand? The little angel. And so she had been holding on to this little thing because it had been like the reminder of what she couldn't let go of. And so letting go in that physical way can be the most challenging part of the emotional well-being, is being able to actually say, "Oh, I'm feeling this. This is really happening right now. Like I'm about to feel even more discomfort as I explore something that was, I did not want to see." Hopefully that connects to what you were asking. I'm not sure if it did.
Oh, I think so. It's definitely interesting. And, like I kind of forgot what I even asked, so that's okay. Like, honestly, what I love about our conversations during these episodes is how just intuitive, like, we don't write a script, we don't do none of that stuff. Yeah, we spend some time meditating on the topic that we've chosen to see what insights might come to us about that, and think about what that is for us, how that affects us. But, I feel like it's really important that we just kind of come as we are, when we decide to get together to talk, and just say what is in our heart and what's on our minds. Because, honestly, I think that's the best stuff is when that comes. And, I was thinking, I'm always using that term primitive angel, right? So in that moment, what I mean by that is like when you are like the perfect person to be in that perfect spot at that perfect time to help somebody else.
Yeah.
And so what's funny about it is that she actually had like a physical angel in her palm, and it's such a great metaphor, right? That we hang on to things, that often don't really serve us, because we just don't know how to let them go. And yet through those things, they give us such strength and resilience that that is the power of those experiences. That is the positive power.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, okay. So I like, you already kind of touched on it, but I was thinking like, okay, so once let's go back down to meltdowns. Temper tantrums, right? And basically what I'm saying is like when you have like those over the top reactions to something that, like I said, may not even have anything to do with it. It just triggered something within you, and your response was like enraged. Like it was just, there was so much coming, so much emotional stuff, coming out of that, and you can't stop. Right? Like you got the red mist and you're like in it. And like, what do you do when that happens? What do you do? Like, do you let it play out? Say all kinds of things you didn't really mean to say or didn't want to say out loud anyways. Sometimes you want to strike out in anger, and I'm not talking about hitting somebody, which nobody should be hitting nobody unless like you're defending your own life or somebody you love. But maybe like slamming a door, or whatever. And I'm talking about that kind of like emotion, that strength of that power of that emotion. So
Well,
you're
yeah.
overwhelmed.
I think anger, when anger comes, it needs to be expressed physically. I've done like literally like punching pillows or a punching bag, putting a pillow really close to your face and screaming as loud as you can and making that sound. I've done like on some of my long dark nights of the soul, I've walked to the frozen shores of Lake Ontario and screamed into the lake, right? And screamed into that thing. You got to watch where you're doing that. People will freak out if they hear it. But we need to let this stuff out, and we need to let it out with the same passion and energy that it exists within us, right? We can't just write in a journal. We can't just always take a bath, right? There are sometimes we need to exercise these emotions to be healthy, to get them out, to have them expressed. So I think that whatever way feels good, there's like, those like places you can go and like smash, a room full of like glass, and they put you in with a baseball bat and you can like smash your way through the room. That's something that people do. I think whatever it takes in a healthy way for you to do it, you got to do it, because if you keep it inside, that's why people have, in my view, ailments that are of the heart, right? Heart disease is so prevalent. Would it be as prevalent if people were self-expressed? Would it be as prevalent if people were able to, defend themselves when bad things were going to happen to them as children? Who knows? But I think that this is where we are in the age now where we know that we need to express them, that anger is healthy, and anger it's a good feeling that, not a good feeling, but I mean, it's a positive emotion to be expressed, and we have to find ways to do it in healthy avenues.
Yeah, I agree. I like to sing when I'm angry. I never sing so well as when I'm pissed right off.
Oh yeah, interesting.
Sex is also a very good thing. Anything kind of like, well, I shouldn't say sex necessarily, but orgasm is what I'm talking about, because it's a release. So like, I think it's important.
If you can coordinate with another person who's also angry sex can be good too. Let's not like if there's a healthy way for that to exist.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, anything like, it doesn't have to me, anger and violence are different. They are not the same thing. So, expressing anger, there's all kinds of ways. Some people will like paint when they're angry. Just throw that paint on the canvas or whatever. So like I agree that you have to express it. It's best to express. I guess you don't have to do anything.
Exercise is a great way.
Great for anger. Oh yeah. And again, I'm gonna, I probably sound like a real, I don't know, softy, but again, I'm gonna go to love. Because I have found that cuddling my golden retriever is awesome for anger. So, but not if I'm angry at him. Okay, not if he like just chewed something of mine and like I'm angry at him. Then no, I don't want to be cuddling him. That's the last thing. But so like that's all part of your own personal exploration, right? It's finding different ways. And like honestly, I'm sure you can just go and Google it, or suggestions for that, like good activities to do with that, like whatever, some people color. Some people really like to color, and especially like mandalas, right? And that can do a lot for them. That can also be a release for them. That breaks apart. But yeah, like finding ways to do that. And then, so I'm curious. Okay, so it's happening. You're in the throes of it, right? You already said it. You're going to try to remove yourself from around other people. Okay, that's the same. Yeah, I need my own safe space, like you talked about. Having a place where I can just let it out, breathe, whatever that is for me, and do it in a way that I don't have to feel self-conscious about it. So that kind of sense. And B, so I don't have to subject anybody else to it, right? And sometimes those things, it's not possible to do those things, right? Sometimes, you're stuck in it. And so that's what makes me rely on my last thing. And my last thing that I can do anywhere, at any time, is I can give myself a hug. I can give myself like an internal hug. And I'm not just talking about like how you hug your auntie that you don't really like yourself, like, oh, hi, okay. I'm talking about, enfolding myself, in my thoughts, in my imagination, and my attention. Giving myself like that internal hug and just like letting it be for a moment or two, And that's one thing, like when I'm in that space, that's when I need to tell people, if there are people around me, what I need. Because I can't expect them to know what I need. Okay? So the responsibility is for me to tell them. And so that's when I might say, I need to take a moment.
Yeah.
Right? And so to me, I know it sounds kind of corny, but I have a lot of compassion for myself. And I find that compassion is a much better motivator for myself than battering myself or like, criticizing myself or that kind of bullshit self-talk that we, do so easily, right, to ourselves. We probably never speak to anybody else that we claim to love like that, but we'll do it to ourselves internally. And so I think a big part of tonight's topic is about how cannabis is our ally. It can help us with these things. But most importantly, we need to be our own ally. And we need to help ourselves through these things. And we can only do that if we approach ourselves with compassion. Mm-hmm. That's my thoughts.
I think, for my final kind of big thought of the night or of this session is that we get to be the people that we needed as kids. This is the work that we're doing right now, is we get to be the person that we needed when we were a kid. Or in some cases, we get to learn to live up to the example that our parents have set for us. But for most of us, there's obviously a bit of both happening, but for most of us, it's being that, most of us didn't grow up in a fully safe, emotionally safe home or space or school, right? We all kind of dealt with some version of getting emotionally neglected, or our feelings weren't taken seriously, or we weren't taught that having boundaries was okay, or that being angry when someone hurts you is okay. Like a lot of us are still struggling with this. A lot of us are still carrying a lot from it. And now, but then the gift is that we get to be that person for ourselves. We get to be that inner parent that says, I love you unconditionally. I'm holding you. I'm holding you. I'm holding this space safe for you to exist in. And when people feel that haven't felt that before, it is deeply healing and very transformative. And the first few times that you're able to do that for yourself and show up for yourself, it to me was very, very moving. And tears came, and it was a very emotional feeling when I was like, oh my gosh, I can take care of me. I can do what I needed and I didn't think I had. I can provide that now. And so that's for me what this emotional wellness is all about.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's we got some funny behaviors. We got some funny attitudes as human beings. Like often we think that people should just know. They should just know what it is we want or what it is we need or whatever. And, you know, we put that on them, that expectation, and then when they don't meet it, it hurts us. Like it makes us angry, or whatever it does, whatever it creates, whatever waves it creates in our emotional landscape. And you know, the thing is like, I don't know about anybody else, but I can say that, you know, one of the motivating factors for me to find different ways to deal with those emotional tidal waves, as it were, is to, you know, reframe them in something that, like I said, you know, is good for me. I might not like how it's, you know, packaged, you know, being the situation or circumstance or how I react to it. But, you know, I'm going to forgive myself every single time because I'm only human. And no matter how much I think or anybody else thinks that I'm some kind of superwoman, I'm not. You know, I just do. And a wise woman told me once that everybody deserves the dignity of their own mistakes. And I don't know, that's just like something that stuck with me because I'm going to allow myself the dignity of my own mistakes because those things are what help me grow. And sometimes they are just things that bring awareness to issues that I have or things that need some attention and intention. And so, like, you know, again, this is a journey. This is a lifelong journey. It's not a time of arrival. You know, I didn't like, I've been working on this for 20 years, man. Okay, I'm good. Like, if only it worked like that. But it doesn't. And the sooner that, you know, the sooner that we don't expect it to work like that, and the sooner that we settle in for the road trip, you know, it's like when you go on a road trip, right? You get your snacks, you get your comfy clothing, right? You fill the tank up with gas, and like you just settle in, put your tunes on, and settle in for the joy of just being. Hopefully that's what it is. So that's kind of like these things, you know, in our life that feel sometimes so overwhelming and complicated, you know, weird, complicated. And you know, it's also individual. It's also unique to us, right? Nobody walks our path. Nobody, you know, sees the universe quite the way we see it. We're unique. We're each unique. And so, yeah, it's a challenge. But like I'm always saying, I feel like we deserve to have a deep of love and joy and healing. And the only people that are really going to make that happen is us. For ourselves, you know what I mean? So, and the thing is, you know, cannabis and other plant and you know, earth medicines, they can be incredible allies on that journey. And not just like in the beginning, but all through it, you know. Even today, I don't know about you, Nick, but like there's not a day that goes by that I don't think at least one time, wow, am I ever going or something. So yeah, keep your spirits up, and you know, the easier that we can accept that these things that happen with us is part of us being human, then the more we can help ourselves through that process.
Yeah.
And before we go, I did want to just talk about, like, if you feel yourself being triggered by something and you recognize in that moment, oh wow, I'm about to lose my shit. You know, what can you do? What do you do in that moment when you catch it? What do you do? Okay, you remove yourself. I know that.
Yeah, I mean, like it's a. I'm trying to think of a time where it's happened recently, so that I can give it a solid example. Nothing's really coming to mind as a recent example.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot, brother.
No, it's okay. Like, because I think this is really helpful for people. I don't think it matters what it is. Like, if it's anger or whatever the feeling it is. Like, I think what would be helpful is, if you're feeling a feeling that's a big feeling, right? When we talk to kids, we're like, wow, you're having a big feeling. And it's true. We have big feelings, right? As an adult, and they could be in the form of anger or sadness or whatever. So what do we do when we have feelings that feel too big? I think it's about, for me, sitting down. If I'm walking around and I'm feeling all this stuff, like, one very simple thing is just to sit the bleep down. And it literally, like, if the body's in too much motion, then it can create more agitation. So what I want to do is remove all stimulating influences. If I'm listening to music, I want to turn off the music. If there's a TV on, I want to turn it off. If there's people in the room having a conversation not related to my feelings, I might say, like, hey, I'm really going through something. Like, can you guys chill for a minute, or I need to go. So it's really about, I think, listening to myself and what it is that I need in that situation. That would be the most practical thing. That just it's a name. Sometimes naming the feeling helps. I'm feeling blank. I'm feeling unsure. I'm feeling insecure. Even if we're just saying it to ourselves, is often a very quick way to diffuse some of the charge of what we're feeling.
There used to be a little chart, and actually I'm going to look at it. I'm going to look for it, and I'm going to put it into the comments of this episode. But a chart just of all these feelings, because we often can only identify, like, the really big ones. And it took me a long time to find out that I had, like, a wide range of feelings. But I would start to feel something, and I would put it into that category: anger, fear, right? Grief, whatever. So yeah, being able to identify them is really important. It's really helpful in your own, like, growth, to understand that you have a wide range of feelings and a big space or big range of intensity.
I remember reading a number of years ago, I can't remember the name of the author. If I do, I'll put it in the show notes. But she was saying that we have our house. We have, like, when we're born, we have this mansion, right, with, like, hundreds of rooms, and each room is one of our emotions, and the doors are open, and we can go to any of the rooms we want to. But then over time, let's say, we get judged for being happy, or a parent tells us, stop being so bold, stop being so whatever. You're being too much, D, right? People can say that stuff like that to us, right? And as kids, and we don't really know, it doesn't mean anything. We take it to heart. It's like, oh no, there's something wrong with me. I shouldn't express this feeling anymore. And what do? We close the door to that room. And then we lose access to all of the things that are happening, not just the negative feeling, but everything that feeling can create and connect to. And so our job as adults, as we're going back and doing the healing work, is to then go discover those rooms that we've locked up and open them again, and let some of the healing that happens, but also, what is there to discover? What beautiful things have we locked ourselves away from? What blessings have we resisted because we didn't want to face this? And that's the goal. That's the why. Why do this work is because there's so much on the other side that's rewarding and sweet and nourishing and wholesome and all encompassing. So that's where we have to keep in mind as well, that on the other side of this acceptance is something quite beautiful.
Well, and that's growth, right? That's the growth of being able to discover that. And once you discover it, the more you discover it, the more credibility and confidence that it builds within you to then, turn to that, as versus choosing something else that doesn't really help you or make you feel better.
Yes.
So yeah, Man, honestly, it's so hard. Life is so hard sometimes. Just dealing with all of us, and incidentally, people are still telling me I'm too much sometimes. So that's, I'm like too much for you, maybe, but it's not too much for me.
Yeah.
So, like, honestly, I hope that this has been an interesting and helpful topic. I've really enjoyed hearing your thoughts and experiences with this. Yeah, I find it just such an odd thing that people might talk about, but I'm so glad you brought up this topic. And at first, I don't know, when you first suggested it, I was thinking like, oh, should we really talk about that? But I'm so grateful that we are, and that we did, and that we continue to. To anybody who's watching this, I just want to say to you, like, we're sharing our experience and our thoughts about things in this podcast, but we invite you to share yours as well in the comments. We are very curious. We know that we are not alone. We know as individuals we're not alone, and we know that as friends and colleagues we're not alone. Because we are represented, we're indicative of the human condition. When you really want to talk about it, instead of trying to pretend you're something that you're not, or trying to pretend that everything's all rosy, especially that inner landscape, right? So, yeah, thanks, Nick. I hope you enjoyed talking about this as much as I did.
Yeah, I did. I thought it was a great conversation, and I'm also excited to hear from our listeners and our viewers and our audience. Please, like this, what are you doing in this area? How do you approach these topics, and what should we be covering? What are topics you want to see us dive into in future episodes? If you liked what we talked about today, if this is your jam, then hit the subscribe button. And so you can see the future videos that are coming, and leave a comment or share with a friend so that we can help spread the word as well. But that's really all I had to say about this topic. I'm so grateful for everybody. Thank you, D. We'll see everyone on another episode of Thrivin With DVIBZ.
Yeah, take care, everyone. See you next time. Stay lit.
Stay lit. Bye-bye.
Bye.